Shuoer. The Shuoer. The Shuoer. Roll the intro. Alright, so here they are, the Shuoer tape. Price $129. It's got one dynamic driver and one electrostatic, or probably more accurate to say an electret driver. As far as comfort goes, these are really comfortable. They're a lot more comfortable than they look, actually. They fit nicely in the ears. They're quite small, similar in size, probably just a little bit bigger than the Tin Hi-Fi P1, but definitely very small, very comfortable in the ears. The cable's pretty nice. It is a little bit stiff. You can probably see there that it's a little bit stiff, but it feels pretty good and it handles quite well. Minimal microphonics. Right, let's get onto the sound. So the tapes have a pretty lively dynamic sound, powerful bass, a nice clear mid-range, and a fairly easygoing treble. The bass has a well-defined attack and a natural decay. There's some really nice sub-bass rumble these are capable of, and good bass extension as well, making these suitable for all types of music genres. The mid-range is nice and clear, it's very articulated, and there's also an upper mid-range boost at around 3 to 4 kilohertz. Probably the only contention that I have is that the peak, the extent of the peak at 3 to 4 kilohertz. I'll talk about that more later. Due to the forwardness of the bass, the mid-range sounds a little bit recessed at times, depending on the recording and the amount of bass in the track. But in general, the mid-range is just a little bit recessed, apart from the 3 to 4 kilohertz peak, which sort of rises up above everything else. That upper mid-range adds presence, it increases definition, so you got a nice snappy percussion hits, kick drums, snare drums, things like that are nice and snappy. Electric guitars, instruments have good texture and good presence. That upper mid-range at times can sound a little bit thin and a little bit strained. It throws off the overall tone a little bit. It doesn't happen often, like a lot of songs you can listen to, they just sound great. But on some songs, it's really noticeable that peak, you can EQ that area down a little bit. Myself, I never use EQ. What's the point? I think if I'm reviewing something, I want to tell you how they sound out of the box, not how they sound after I EQ'd them. But in this case, because these are a really good earphone, yeah, you can EQ that area a bit and they do sound a lot better. You get a more natural tone doing that. The treble it's unremarkable, but that actually makes it really good because it just does its part in the background and it's neither dull or strident. It's just there, it just does its thing. It's a good accompaniment to the bass and the mid-range, and the timbre of the treble is quite good as well. Treble extension is good, plus it's kind of light and airy and detailed sound without being forward. The treble sits behind the upper mid-range peak. When it comes to Soundstage, that's one of the strong points of the tape. The Soundstage is very wide and it's also quite large. The instrument separation is really good, but there's not much in the way of layering. You don't get much of a sense of depth. Very good stereo left and right imaging, but not so much positional awareness like It's not a sort of a 3D image, it's more of a two-dimensional image. Tokyo Rose by the Tacoma Narrows Bridge Disaster. The tapes give a nice full-bodied representation of the bass in this song. Highlight really good instrument separation. There's loads of texture in especially in the electric guitars, nice and textured. That's where that upper mid-range really comes into play, giving definition to instruments and vocals. Notorious B.I.G. Ready to Die. This song has got a massive sub-bass hit that goes throughout the whole song, and listening to it with the tape, yeah, you can really feel it. It kind of gives you a sensation like as though the walls are shaking. Really powerful. So in case you're wondering that the tapes can't bring the bass, have no fear, they've got more than enough. And finally is King of Sorrow by Shuoer. Now in this one, again, you get that nice full bass response with really good control, but in this particular song, the quantity of bass that the tape produces is maybe bordering on a little bit too much. It kind of overpowers the track a bit. But Shuoer's vocals, they're vibrant, got really good articulation, they're very clear, but at the same time she's still got that sultry and rich tone to them, so the Shuoer does pretty good for this track. It's just a little bit, feels a little heavy in the bass for that particular song. So yeah, a lot of people have been asking for a comparison between the Tin Hi-Fi P1 and the Shuoer tape. Biggest difference you'll notice right away is the bass. This one, the tape has a lot more bass, especially sub bass. This one can really get a rumble going. The P1's sub bass is very light, was the #1 criticism of this IEM. In the mid-range, the P1 it's kind of smoother, it's a bit warmer, it's more inviting, whereas the tape is a bit more contrasty, it's drier in the mid-range, and particularly in the upper mid-range where it has that boost, it gets a bit brighter. And in terms of treble, they're kind of both fairly similar. Another major difference between these two is the soundstage. The tape has a fairly large and particularly wide soundstage, but there's not a good sense of depth, but it does sort of occupy a larger space, whereas the P1 has a smaller, more intimate stage, but it's more rounded and you get a better sense of layering, positioning, sort of 3D stage. This is more of a two-dimensional stage, if that makes sense. This has good separation, this has amazing separation. That has a lot to do with the quantity of the bass. This has less bass, it sort of allows the mid-range to have more resolution. So yeah, which one you prefer will be down to what you like personally. Myself, I probably go for the P1 most of the time. For certain types of music, hip hop, electronic, I would probably go for this one. So that is about it for the Shuoer tape. I still don't know if I'm pronouncing that anywhere near correctly or not. So for 129 bucks, yeah, definitely these are a good earphone and pretty easy recommendation. So pick up a set if you're after that dynamic, lively sound. That's it for this video. If you liked it, consider giving it a thumbs up, and if you want to see upcoming reviews, hit that subscribe button, and until next time, audio fans, see you later.